Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, World Alternative Media here, and of course we're joined by author and economic analyst here at WAM, John Sneisen, and we've been hearing this news that the loonie is quote-unquote soaring, and I mean, first of all, before I even get into the article, I really think it should be made as abundantly clear as possible that looking at two fiat currencies and comparing them both to each other as both are being devalued incredibly, and then saying one's soaring, they're both going down, one's just going down faster. It's absurd.
Well, I think they're actually talking about the loon itself, that it has the potential to soar, maybe.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Oh my God, we started off this video with the terrible joke already. Anyway, getting into the article from CTV News. Oil surges and loonie rises, but markets muted on new NAFTA deal. And as the article goes into, the price of oil hit a 4-year high and the Canadian dollar rose to its highest level since May on Monday, but the reaction in North American markets to a tentative trade deal to replace NAFTA was pretty subdued. After rising sharply in early trading, markets ended the day moderately higher, mainly due to the performance of the important energy sector in Canada and of General Electric Co. in the US. The S&P/TSX Composite Index hit a high of 16,193.06, but closed up just 31.29 points to 16,104.43. And I quote, "It's got to be good news for just about everybody, but it is a bit of a muted response," Michael Curry, Vice President and Investment Advisor at TD Wealth, said of the reaction to the new US-Mexico-Canada agreement. The energy sector led the market, rising 2% on the back of a 38% increase in MEG Energy Corp shares following a hostile takeover offer by Husky Energy Inc., valued at $6.4 billion, including the assumption of $3.1 billion in debt. On top of that, reports have suggested LNG Canada, an estimated $40 billion gas liquefaction plant and pipeline that was delayed in 2016, could be officially sanctioned shortly. And I quote, "We haven't seen many deals out of the energy patch of this size in quite a while," Curry said in an interview. Crude prices gained almost 3% Monday, with the November crude contract up US $2.05 to US $75.30 per barrel. And I quote, "If you are in the oil patch, you couldn't ask for a better day." Shares of Canada's largest auto parts company, Magna International Inc., closed up 2.2% at $69.36, while Linamar Corp was up 6.3% to $63.26, and Martin Ray International Inc. was up 10.5% to $14.47. US President Donald Trump had threatened to impose punishing auto tariffs on Canada if it didn't reach a deal to replace the North American Free Trade Agreement. As a side deal to the new pact called US-Mexico-Canada Trade Agreement, wow, inventive title there, or USMCA, the Trump administration has agreed to exempt Canada if the United States imposes 25% tariffs on imported vehicles and auto parts. Excluding energy, the TSX likely fell as information technology led sectors on the downside, with BlackBerry shares falling 5.1%. The loonie was trading at an average of 78.11 cents US, up from an average of 77.25 cents US on Friday. That's the highest level since May 22nd. The increase is directly attributable to the trade deal involving Canada, the United States, and Mexico, said Curry, who noted that bank economists are predicting the loonie could head to the 80-cent range. So I want to kind of start off by saying this is all a bunch of government garbage. It's all bureaucratic nonsense, and it seems like we're still looking towards that North American Union that we've been concerned about for so long. This combination of regulators throughout these countries, 3 different countries, Canada, the US, Mexico, deciding the market instead of individuals deciding with the demand of their dollar, or currency, I should say, competing without legal tender law nonsense. But I really think we'll start with the Canadian dollar. All fiat currencies eventually revert to their true value of zero, always have, always will, going back to 1024 AD in China. This time's no different. And this idea that we should get all excited and gung-ho over the Canadian dollar going up relative to the US dollar is ridiculous, pathetic, and it's just more example of people not understanding what drives and what crashes these forces, these centralized monetary forces enslaving people in debt. John, what do you think about all this?
Well, I think it's a joke, first of all, that, anybody's talking about the Canadian Canadian dollar going up or down, as Josh says, they're just going down, relative to everything else. Like they're just constantly going down. Every single fiat currency on the planet, there's no fiat currency going up in value. They're constantly printing more currency into circulation through the loans that's coming out. It's either the M0, which is like cash and coins in circulation, which is almost minuscule compared to what is getting created in the M2, M3, all the debt that's getting created in the monetary system on top of what gets issued, by the deficit spending in the country. So you're looking at the total destruction of the Canadian dollar. Like, just go and look at the prices here in Canada, and then tell me, if the Canadian dollar has gained so much value. It's constantly losing value versus actual real things, commodities, things that we need to survive, eat or use.
Yeah, the purchasing power, John. What we don't, we try to explain, it's very elementary, it's very simple. The fact that purchasing power is a huge factor in the worthiness of a currency. When you think about, people don't seem to realize that, bread is going up in price. No, bread isn't going up in price necessarily. It's the currency itself that's going down in value. So you can say one year you buy something for $15, several years later you buy something for $20. It's not that the price has necessarily increased on that product. It could have even gone down in that time when that difference of that number difference changed. That is what it comes down to, purchasing power. And people, you have to realize, no fiat currency maintains a good purchasing power. It always loses its purchasing power. It always goes down. It always devalues. Every single fiat currency does the same thing. So you'd think that people would consider this. They don't teach it in school, at least from what I'm aware of, in public school anyway. It's absurd, and this is a really important factor to play into it.
Well, yeah, it's the biggest theft in humankind history is inflation. It's, stealing without people's consent. Nobody knows really that they're getting stolen from. They know that about the taxes that the government is stealing from you, but they don't know necessarily about what inflation is and how it's created. It's very simple to explain. Let's say that, I have $100 that I have on hand, and then suddenly Josh comes into my community and with $200, and now there's $300 in the community, and we both want to buy the same thing. Well, it's going to be pretty clear that it's going to take a little bit more money to actually buy that thing now. Because there's more supply of a currency versus the demand that's there. So what is happening is that you're just constantly, adding on to the supply of the money, and then the demand for the objects usually stays the same, and it fluctuates a little bit. But that's what you're seeing. You just have a massive, influx of supply of currency. Meanwhile, the demand stays pretty put. Well, that should tell you, that automatically then the price should come down because there's more supply than demand. It's just natural economics, but nobody really tells it in the supply and demand function.
Yeah, well, I have a question, John. So considering this recent story of the Canadian dollar going up in comparison to the US dollar, is there anything at all to this? What does it tell us anything at all, really?
Well, you could of course play it. If you trade with the United States, you can make lots of money on those fluctuations. Same with Americans trading with Canada. You could play that game forth and back. But the problem is, when you, for example, you sell your things in one currency, like I've seen this in Norway all the time, where the Norwegian krona gets weak. It's great times. Things are going really good in Norway. But the problem is, at that same time, because the Norwegian krona is weak, people want to buy from you. Well, you also have the problem on the other side that there's more Norwegian krona in circulation, and you actually are losing out because the population is getting less and less purchasing power for that currency that they have because of these currency fluctuations. So you could see it going up and down like this all the time, and it doesn't really matter unless you, for example, we like to go down to the States and buy stuff when it's cheap, because it's a lot cheaper down there, but because our currency is garbage worth less, a lot less than the American dollar, it takes a lot more for us to actually go down there and buy it. You got to travel down there and so on. And then if you don't get 20-30% off on the product, well, 30% usually off of the products, there's no point of going down there anymore. So you saw like traffic down to the States from Canada has drastically decreased because of the, the Canadian US dollar exchange rate. So that is one thing that you'll see. You see that in Norway too. I see that between the Norwegian krona and the Swedish krona.
Yeah, going to like the United States cost me a fortune. Going to Mexico, I save a ton of money because their currency is even worse. So
exactly. No, yeah, and that's what it is. So yeah, you might actually like you just gotta try to play it if you can. These currencies and actually make more money throughout that. And of course, the bankers do that all the time. They play the forex markets, the foreign exchange markets.
It's funny, Jim Rogers plays the markets. He hates fiat currencies, yet he's still trading fiat. I'm going to have to ask him about that next time I see him. But anyway, John, you got the copper stats up here.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the copper. We were talking about, all this NAFTA trade and so on. What you're really seeing is a slowdown in the economy, both in the United States, both in Canada. There's so much, talk about how the whole economy is just thriving. It's going up because all these tax cuts. Those tax cuts wasn't really, they weren't really made for the populace itself. It was mostly the big corporations that took out the profits, and then they bought more. They created, they got into more debt, buying back more shares.
I mean, it did. Yeah, there's the share buybacks, so it did affect, taxpayers of the poor population somewhat. I think that obviously it doesn't outweigh the fact that it's mostly about government manipulating markets. And with this whole trade deal situation, John, I feel like it's really important to mention that, first of all, the SEC comes after, or the Security and Exchange Commission in the United States, they come after companies that quote unquote manipulate markets or manipulate their shareholders or give them bad advice, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But then they don't really, when the government itself is doing it, no one seems to care. And it's clear that they are manipulating markets with these regulations, these trade deals. This stuff is garbage, folks. I mean, John, I wanted you to go into the trade deal specifically, considering the fact that we have this globalist entity, this union of countries telling us what we should or should not buy, what there will be tariffs on, what there won't be tariffs on, these certain deals that these governments are making for individuals. What do you think about that?
Well, it's just the government manipulating prices. You have, for example, the United States saying that, well, I want to protect my market, so I'm going to put a tariff on, let's say, corn, for example, because I want to protect my farmers. Well, we're going to give you a little bit back, Canada, so you can protect your milk farmers by putting tariffs on that. So tax, to get milk over into Canada from the United States. So it's just a big game of corporate fascism, basically, what you're seeing there, together with the government, the colluding with the government.
This isn't capitalism.
No, it's 100% like so far away from free market economics that you can get, because what you're looking at here is actually the government working with the corporations to set, we're gonna protect you, protect this sector in our economy, you can protect yours. So it's just a big chess game of who gets to protect their economies, instead of saying, let's just remove all duties and have a free trade, real free trade between the economies, where they actually have to compete with each other, the US and the Canadian economy.
Instead of governments trading with governments, how about individuals trade with individuals? And we have this nonsense that has come into the equation with market manipulation that we've been talking about, this absolutely anti-capitalistic mentality, this idea that they can tell individuals who they can or cannot or should not or shouldn't trade with. It's absolutely ridiculous. And let's also remember that when it comes down to it, these governments don't have exactly a say in the overall economy. They're just trying to prop it up as long as they can because they know it's going down. Look at, for example, in Canada, we constantly hear all this stuff about how Trudeau is raising employment levels dramatically. Well, except for the fact that he's hiding all these numbers in the labor force participation rate, etc. When you actually look into that, it's a dramatic amount of people who aren't actually working, and that if someone's looking for a job over a certain period of time, they're just taken out of the unemployment rate. It's a sham. It's a complete sham, and we're the people that are at the butt end of it, and we're dealing with countless taxes. The government doesn't do anything unless it benefits them. They might hand us something every now and then, like, here's your little pittance prize or something like that, but in the end, it's all just a big charade in order to keep their support up. And in the end, they want ultimate collectivism. In the end, they want ultimate control. In the end, they want ultimate servitude of the masses. They are dependent on the dependence of the populace, and we need to understand that before we go gung-ho over this party, that politician, that politician. Do it yourself, free yourself, stop depending on government to free you, because you cannot get freedom from government. Government cannot give you freedom. They can only take it away. And once we realize that they are nothing more than an organized crime racket, hell-bent on having complete control over you, then you'll realize that you must be free, you must decentralize, you must look at these entities as nothing more than a criminal entity trying to extort you, trying to lead you down a path of complete servitude. John?
Well, you're looking at these trade deals going forth and back. And what I find very interesting is the corporations, they get these deals, they get, zero to pay a 0% duty or something. Meanwhile, you as a consumer have to pay duties on things. They don't really care about the little guy here. And as you said, you did the peer-to-peer individual trading between you and the corporation. That is where we need to go with this. We need to eliminate, because governments, thrive on this trade deals because they get to make money off of them as soon as you trade things. Now, I just recently bought some work clothes over in Britain because I wanted to get a specific brand that I couldn't find in Canada because there's just garbage clothes here I found when it comes to workwear. So I wanted to find a real solid, real good quality workwear. I had to go to Britain to buy a Swedish brand that I wanted. It was about $120. But they just called me a couple of weeks ago wanting to collect duties on it, Josh, and it was about $41. So that is about almost, what is that, Josh? That's about 30-something% in duties, 30% tax, on just getting a piece of clothing over, and then it becomes very much expensive. So I wonder if it's a way to, of course, protecting the clothing industry versus the clothing industry in Europe or so on. It's just how the playing game between corporate fascists all around the world is working to protect their economies. That's what tariffs are. It's just barriers, that really are slowing down the economy tremendously because the government is stealing, everything from every little transaction on the different things, Josh. And it's just completely destroying the economy. I want to go back and show...
One thing, you mentioned duties. Cue the poop emoji on the screen, duties. Okay, anyway, go ahead. Continue.
I just want to show one last chart here to just show you a little bit about where is the Canadian dollar compared to the US dollar. We talk about the Canadian dollar soaring and so on. Actually, the Canadian dollar is not really soaring compared to where it was before. Like we were back in, looking at 2013, 14, we were down at a low where actually the Canadian dollar was more worth than the US dollar at one point. I remember all my family used to travel down there all the time, and that would suddenly stop because we became so expensive because of the exchange difference in the currencies. And you see that everywhere. You see that impacting economies worldwide, and what you saw the seizure of trade with the Americans, slow seizure because of this currency devaluation that the Canadians have done. It was cheaper at first, but then of course the Americans had the upper hand because now they could buy a little bit cheaper from us than we could from them and so on. So just a big game, this fiat currency game and the trade game on a global scale. All that it is just the governments wanting to steal as much of the transaction of the value getting transacted between human beings as possible so they could benefit themselves and create an even bigger government on top of it. That's all that it is, Josh. They're just constantly trying to build up little by little. It's just small increments in taxation that you don't really see, if you look at your tax bill every year. But if you really go and look at it, it's just incremental, increase in government to a certain point where people are going to say, I can't afford to trade anymore or to do anything. And then everything ceases to exist in trade. And that's the biggest danger here, that trade seizes up. We're seeing all the trade wars around the world. At any given point, that has happened throughout history. usually you get a war because somebody is going to get mad because somebody's losing a lot of money that is on the losing end of the trade side, and then they're going to retaliate against the others that are winning.
And all the while we have these government monopolies being propped up by regulation, taxation, this completely unfair advantage to major corporations that the government, the leftists always talk about how they want to get rid of these big monopolies, but then they regulate and tax more, which only the big monopolies can afford to deal with, while the small businesses get driven out of the market. It's all crazy. We're being taxed, extorted to death. We are being pushed into debt servitude. Folks, we need to decentralize. We need to rule ourselves. We need to protect our purchasing power. We need to educate ourselves and be financially responsible. For the whole idea of freedom itself is responsibility. You cannot have one without the other. So folks, I hope you continue to look into our videos, watch what we've been talking about for so long. This is so important, John. We've been going on forever about this. And of course, yeah, but while we said fiat currencies always revert to zero, we have to understand that the fundamentals are off the table due to the level of manipulation. So you cannot put a date on it. We just know what's going to happen. So prepare yourself, folks.
Well, just one last point. Look at the loonie. I was thinking about it. I wrote about it in my book, Canada, the Greatest Economy in the World, where I was talking about how the loonie actually lost its value over time substantially, because what they've done is they used the old technique that was discovered by the Greeks in the 400 BC, where they actually took out the better metals of the coinage and then replaced it with lesser. Actually, now currently it used to be silver content in it. Well, now currently today, Josh, there's steel. That is the last, malleable metal that they are able to use. That is the most cheapest possible. But meanwhile, it's still worth that $1. Yeah. It's a big joke.
Yeah, look at the Weimar Republic, for example. Before its hyperinflationary event in 1921, they started using a different kind of metal. I forget exactly what it was, but it was more shiny. And I have a few coins put away somewhere. I got to find those, but they're shinier than the ones previous. And we saw the same thing, I think, between 2010 or 2012. The Royal Canadian Mint ended up doing the exact same thing. They lowered the actual pricey content of the coinage, and it just started looking more sparkly and shiny. And everyone's like, "Wow, it's so beautiful."
It looks like gold and silver.
Yeah, but it's not. And that is the biggest issue there. So anyway, we'll continue to keep you updated on this situation as it unfolds, as it always unfolds, as we're constantly centralized into oblivion. But always remember, folks, you can be the solution you wish to see. Decentralize everything, rule yourself, be self-sustainable, stop licking boot. Okay, anyway, thanks for going into this with us, John. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson and John Sneisen signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth,
be the change.
Like what you see here, OM? Don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we are so overwhelmingly demonetized by YouTube as they bring in the ADL to flag all of our content as hate speech. Also check our Bitcoin address in the description as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And also check us out at Steemit at Josh Sigurdson, the future of social media, where you get paid in the upvote of your post in cryptocurrency, Steem that is. So don't forget to check us out there and find us at Anarchapulco 2019. I know it's early, but this is such an exciting event coming up with Ron Paul, Judge Napolitano, David Icke, Larkin Rose, Jeff Berwick, all the usual characters, and it's going to be amazing. So we hope to see you there. Make sure to check the link for Anarchapulco below and use promo code WHAM to save as much as 15% on your tickets. We hope to see you there. But until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that. you.